Hello and welcome to the Lisbon Library's new virtual program, Where'd That Come From? A brief look at some unique family heirlooms that have interesting or strange stories behind them, and how we can learn more about our connections to the past. We invite you, our patrons, to contact us here at the library for information about how we can feature your story as well. A few years ago, my mother gave me this sort of clunky looking ashtray. It is tarnished and worn. As a non-smoker, I was a little confused as to why she wanted me to have it. Looking at it closer, I saw a red pennant or flag. It had some enamel and a little lion on it. And barely visible on the edges, there's some writing. It's very hard to make out. My mother mentioned it had belonged to James Donaghy, my great-grandfather's brother. And apparently James had taken a ship from Ireland to the U.S. in the early 1900s to visit with his family, who had traveled already to the U.S. And at some point during the voyage, James had snuck into one of the fancy first-class saloons on the upper decks and had stolen it as a souvenir. So far, just a normal case of petty theft, but where it gets interesting is the name of the ship that he took passage on. And looking at the engraving on the edges of that ashtray, it says RMS Lusitania, and many people recognize the Lusitania as one of the reasons the United States entered World War I. She was sunk in 1915 with many passengers on board, and it was one of the causes that propelled the U.S. into the war a few years later. But before that, the ocean liner had quite a career as a transatlantic transport of people emigrating to the U.S. And her maiden voyage took place in 1907. It was very popular with families emigrating to the U.S. because of the relative comfort of the accommodations on board, especially the third-class accommodations were a big step up from what they had been used to, which was basically living in the sort of the bottom of the boat in with all the bilge water. Doing some additional research online, I was able to find an auction site that had an identical ashtray that they dated to around 1910. And some searching on AncestryLibrary.com resulted in a record for a James Donaghy, who is a British citizen returning to the UK on July 27, 1911. He was traveling third class on the RMS Lusitania. So while I didn't find a trip of his voyage from the UK to the US, there is enough circumstantial evidence there to corroborate the family history that he stole it from the Lusitania. How it ended up in my branch of the family, I'm not sure, but it was kind of a neat little puzzle, and I'm happy to share that little mystery with other people. Hopefully they find it interesting.